questions. So welcome to you, Mr. Caves and Mr. Thu and Mr. Verhoeven, and we will proceed. I was just going to say with Councillor Teo Skipworth, but she's on her way. That was the last question that was needing to be raised. So, so we're going to put the map up for everybody to see. Moving now into questions, both on the written and verbal submissions. We're putting the map up so everybody understands the areas we're talking about and the submitters have referred to. And if there's any questions on any of the background or understanding the scheme, no question is a silly question. Some of our newer councillors, some of us have understood the scheme, have been here for a while, but some of you may want some clarity and clarification on the purpose and the scheme. And stage 2 was always about an increased level of service for stormwater. So, you know, that's where we're, you know, heading. So we'll start with you, Councillor Watkins.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just for clarification on the map, the question about the stock bank, could you just clearly identify where that stock bank is?
So it's just the associated here with the peanut roundabout.
Excuse me, can you turn on your microphone, please?
Apologies. That's the peanut roundabout on Te Ara Kakatea Drive. Everyone knows that location and familiar with that? Yep. So just on this bend here is the gap in the stock bank. The original alignment cut through that area.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Councillor Corbyn.
Thank you, Your Worship. We've been given this paper from 2006. It doesn't actually say what the outcome was, what the community, the landowners said, what they agreed to at the time. Do we have that information?
So can we have that's a question?
At a high level and depending on the detail needed. So a decision was made to strike a targeted rate for the construction of a gravity pipeline, which was constructed in 2007 to a design level of a 1 in 5. So to handle a 1 in 5 years storm event.
And was there any decision made on the pump at a later date?
The pump station was deferred due to unaffordability considerations at the time.
Sorry, it was deferred till?
It was just deferred to a future point in time with no specified date on future consideration.
Yep, so it was a two-stage process was
the intention
proposed.
The intention was set that
So the man who was there at the time, speaking directly.
I remember this well.
Sorry, Steve, we've just got some more. I could see Brett up there.
Thank you. So in terms of the landowner discussions at the time, we put the proposal and the option to do all of it at one time. So that was both the gravity pipe and the pump station, or the option of deferring the pump station to a later time. And Mr. Hoggard pointed out in his submission that we had a notional 50% of development across the catchment would be a trigger for that to occur.
Right, so 70% of the landowners agreed to a two-stage process, and when 50% was developed, the second stage would come in, which is the pump station.
Yep, so there was no agreement in the targeted rate agreement that everyone signed. It was only ever for the gravity pump station. So it was on the basis that there was an acknowledgement that a pump station was part of the ultimate solution for a 1 in 5, and I think I've explained the reasons behind that in the past, is when the Clive River was up, you wouldn't get any gravity flow, and the pump station would do what the gravity pipe couldn't do. So the pump station was only for a 1 in 5 as well. So it wasn't for an increased level of service, it was just to maintain the level of service when the gravity pipe was compromised.
But in 2006, there was an agreement to a two-stage process. The targeted rate was sorted out for the gravity pipe, and the pump was left to be sorted out later.
And I think, and as I say, I remember this meeting well, because there was lots of discussion about whether they should do the pump station now or not. There was not a significant amount of development occurring because there were massive constraints on on-site stormwater. Regional council were managing this up until that time. And there was no firm agreement that we were, council or the landowners were committing to a pump station, and it was never put forward as part of that original proposal for the targeted rate and the document that everyone signed. It was only for the gravity system, and we would come back when that trigger was reached to discuss the stage 2.
Thank you. Can I remind councillors to direct questions through standing orders through the chair, not directly to the officers? Thank you. Councillor Teo Skipworth.
Thank you, Worship. I've got a couple of questions, if that's okay. I just want to tag on to Councillor Corbyn's question around, I think, did you say there were 70% of landowners that were okay with, back in 2006, do we know how many of those landowners are still current landowners, or have we got a shift in, that's my first question, and ownership, sorry.
Through your worship. In actual fact, there was 88% support for Scheme 1, 70% was the threshold that council deemed the targeted rate would be struck. In terms of original landowners and what we see now, there's been a lot of subdivision, a lot of development has occurred. So there are now lots of landowners that are part of those original parcels, where a single landowner back in the day, if they were making that decision now, there would be multiple landowners that would be involved. So I guess that's just progress and development over time. There are a whole lot more people involved in this discussion than there ever were back in 2006.
Right, my next question, if I may, Your Worship. A number of submitters talked about the stock banks being a problem as to why the properties, probably in addition to why their properties flooded. Did we engage Hawke's Bay Regional Council, because there's a great obligation on the current landowners for targeted rates? However, Regional Council was a landowner with water sitting on top of it, the Awa. Did we engage them to these community meetings? Because we've got a hole that we're trying to fix with this pump station. We also have a hole in the boat that isn't being addressed in regards to the
So Regional Council been part of this whole process. Thank you.
Through your worship, the Hawke's Bay Regional Council were not invited to the landowner meetings, as the scheme as it's constructed is a Hastings District Council scheme, and this is the evolution from the original scheme back in 2006, 2007. I can say it was commented on at particularly the last two landowner meetings, that regional council attendance would be desirable. In that scenario, officers believe that the conversations would have become a regional council conversation wider than the Whakatu industrial area and the 105 hectare collecting catchment that this solution pertains to. Officers, HDC council officers, have relayed feedback, particularly around the gap in the stop bank, to Hawke's Bay Regional Council.
And this is my last, if I may. Oh, sorry.
Just through you, Chair, I'm just wondering, through you, Your Worship, and Steve can add to this, we have talked directly to HBRC on this issue, and they have acknowledged there is a low point, and they are working with officers, and if they haven't had a walk through with the staff yet, they're planning to. So yesterday they've walked through the site to look at the potential solutions. So they have acknowledged, not saying that they've committed to fixing it, but it has been acknowledged that there is a low point that needs to be remedied.
Okay, and just
Through-
a last question.
Through the chair, just to close out that Craig's comment. So the solution for the repair of that stop bank is not complex, but it is a funding consideration that sits with regional council. And to be fair to regional council, they need to put it in their appropriate planning processes to the budget.
Just a last quick one.
Be a recommendation. Councillor Teo Skipworth?
Sorry, and without stating the obvious, as I'd like to hear it from the officers, your worship, is what is, if not a targeted raid, what are the other alternatives without stating the obvious?
That is for your consideration. Officers, it's probably, so, you know, your question is around who pays and who benefits, and is there the opportunity to assess the ability to determine that? So that's probably a question for you, Lex. Is that the question? Yep. Who pays, who benefits? Thank you, Lex.
Well, that matters in the report for your consideration. You did consider that before you adopted your statement proposal and put it to the community. So I guess that's your starting position. But, you know, this is an open process, and if you can reflect on the feedback that you've received during this process and have that debate again, if you wish to.
Is there the ability to assess the benefit?
In terms of assessing benefits, I think what officers are saying there is that in terms of public good, if you're talking about that, then I'll just refer you back to the statement proposal. It's got a rather large section on that, the things that you considered when you arrived at that judgment. In terms of the benefit between different categories of landowners, if that's your question, you know, that's challenging, but the type of thing you might entertain there is to look at whether there might be potential differentials in uplift of property value on the basis that the current flooding hazard was removed in a 1 in 50-year event. That might be something you could pin a differential on. That would require the council undertaking more work to determine that with any sort of certainty.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, and through your worship. Yeah, my question was similar. If we wanted to find out if there is any landowner that would benefit over another because of the scheme, how would we determine what that differential would be? What would be the process that you would go through?
Yeah, I think I just repeat what I said before, really. I think the one thing that you may, it's a may, you don't know until you do the work, I think, is to potentially look at that differentiation valuation, removing a hazard from a property and what that means in terms of uplift in property value and therefore potentially benefit might be one way that you would tackle that.
Yep, through your worship, I understand all that, but how would you go about it? Through your worship, would it be a consultancy firm?
What is the process?
That was the question.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yes, exactly. You engage property evaluation firm or the like to undertake that work for you, and then officers potentially review that and look at constructing a plausible differential to take back to council.
So through your worship, that could be an option available to council if we wanted to pursue that.
Yes, and I think that's referred to in option 3.
Yep.
So
yep.
that councillors consider more work to be done if you're of a mind to have that work done.
Yep.
Councillor Dixon?
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Just there were a number of submissions that were the same ×3 or ×4. Will these landowners have different parcels of land, and how were they counted?
Yep, so all the analysis is done on the 61 properties that are being proposed to pay the rate. It just so happens that some landowners own more of those. There's roughly, I think it's about 45 landowners, but 61 discrete properties. And so the analysis is based on the 61 properties.
Thank you. And if the river hadn't breached its banks, would the retention ponds and the gravity-fed drain, what would have been the result? Would they have held?
Good question.
Yes, look, I'll talk to them, sorry, through your worship. I'll talk to this one because I was actually out at Whakatū late in the evening of the night that we had all of the rain, the Cyclone Gabriel. I took the opportunity to drive around, and at around midnight, all of the roadside swales were full. There was sheet flow coming off a lot of properties. There was the low-lying land was starting to fill up, as much as I could see with car lights and a torch. So there was evidence there that we were heading into an event. On the day after the rainfall, or once the rainfall had stopped, the gravity system did what it was intended to do, because the Karamu stream hadn't come up by that stage. It was only the day after the Karamu stream came up and the evidence of overtopping from the low stop bank coming into the scheme. So the course of events was heavy rain. We saw the effects without without stormwater coming in from the Karamu stream, and that was starting to drain away. And then we had this inflow from outside coming in, creating the flooding again. Didn't coincide at the same time.
Thank you, Worship. Another question, if I may. That puts some importance on the needing to fix that gap in the stop bank. So where is the regional council at with that?
So that's a recommendation that you could ask as
I will
council.
do that later, Your
Yes,
Worship.
yes,
Thank
but-
you.
Yeah, it's how we direct the officers now. We've heard from the submitters, everybody is referred to the flood protection. And so you probably need consider an action, Councillor Dixon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nixon?
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. I just want to pick up on a couple of points that have come up. The one, Phil made Hogarth made the comment about it being unique as a wet industrial area. And I'm interested, and I'm wondering to what extent is that influencing the sort of development that's going on in that area? I'm just trying to really better understand the background behind land values, because several of the submitters commented on the level of rates that they're paying. So I just want to try and get a better understanding of what might be fair and not.
What was your question, please?
Well, I want an explanation as to
Question is,
about the wet aspect, the wet area aspect of this land.
so we're talking about the scheme here and identifying who should pay and how we manage the scheme. So rather than the whole industrial area being a wet area. So is there a direct question on the scheme?
That's what I'd asked. I'm trying to get just a bit of information that relates to sort of development that's going on there. I mean, could these industries go somewhere else, or are they wet industries that need to be there?
Thank you.
Through Your Worship, look, there's a mix of industrial and commercial operations in the catchment, but there aren't any wet industries as such. And one of the reasons for that is that access to water is an issue. It was always promulgated because of its proximity to our trade waste network and the access to be able to discharge trade waste from wet industries, large volumes, but it's primarily dry industry that is developed in Whakatū West.
That's exactly what I wanted.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey?
Thank you. Again, raised by some of the submitters is around the term of the rate, and we've put forward just the 10 years, and the 10 years was quite specific to individually to each of those property owners to what they were set to pay. And interestingly, one of those ratepayers on their smaller properties, they were relatively happy with it, but as soon as their larger land holding, the price went up. So do we have any flexibility? What can we negotiate in some way or form to make this more palatable to some than others?
Thank you, through Your Worship. That was a discussion point through the landowner meetings, and at that time, it felt like 10 years would land about right, but it was never a closed question. In fact, in the statement of proposal, it asked for landowner feedback on that very point, and received some of that. Look, anything's possible really. Like for some schemes in the past, we've offered two types of loan repayment terms, one at 10 and one at 25 or something like that. Other times when there's been general landowner sort of commitment to one, we've just done the one. So they're both options. That's what this process was intended to flush out. In terms of the lump sum payments, that's something we can look at as well. There are some procedural things and administrative things we'd have to look at there, but that's, I think, not insurmountable either.
Thank you.
Thank you. That could be part of your consideration. Councillor Corbyn?
Thank you, Your Worship. I've got 3 questions. First one relates to alternative solutions, and a number of the submitters said that they have got detention ponds, etc., which were part of their consent from the Regional Council. What standard is it? 1 in 5, 1 in 50, those detention ponds? And do they actually feed into the scheme eventually?
So, Your Worship, in response, Councillor Corbyn, so through the modelling analysis and also the model that we ran in an accelerated time, I think it was pointed out that some of those on-site detention areas and on-site private stormwater mitigations were picked up in the model, and they were identified as around the periphery as deeper standing water areas. Typically, the on-site stormwater solutions are designed to minimum requirements or with a degree of conservancy in them, but the stormwater solution being proposed is much greater than typically the on-site storage systems that have been constructed.
And then the second part of that question is, one of the submitters said, well, for the cost, the rates, they would look at doing their own scheme. How feasible is that?
Through Your Worship, that is a very good question, Councillor Corbyn. Probably the thought that comes to my mind straight away is that will increase considerably the complexity of the scheme, and then coming back talking about values and benefits to be able to work all that out in detail. I don't know if we'd ever get to a point of being able to put hand on heart to make those judgment calls per your property.
Thank you, Your Worship. One other element that we haven't talked about here with on-site solutions is that a lot of those are for stormwater treatment. So they're not so much for volume mitigation or peak mitigation. They are to manage the effects of contamination from hard stand surfaces. So Regional Council generally requires that they are operating up to about a 1 in 5 year or even a 1 in 10 year, and it depends on the level of contaminants and what type of contaminants there are. The other comment I would make is that Regional Council generally will defer to a scheme, a stormwater scheme, and in this case, with an HDC stormwater scheme, they are somewhat reluctant to allow people to go it alone when there is a scheme that will deliver the same solution and the same outcome.
And one final question, the catchment area, are we confident that all of those properties in that catchment area run off or drain into the scheme rather than draining off the other way to the river, for instance?
Through Your Worship, proof of concept and hydraulic modelling has been completed to date, and that determined the extent of the catchment and the catchment boundary. Peer review of that model is currently in progress, with a site visit tomorrow to the peripheral properties to ground truth the model. and querying with the consultancy that is completing that proof of concept peer review, as of last night, no significant concerns had been identified.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Butto?
Thank you, Your Worship. This is the first targeted rate that I've been involved in while at council, and I see that the support for the concept of the scheme is quite good at 83%, but the support for the payment of the scheme is somewhat lesser. If you take the respondents, for example, it sits at around 46%, with somewhat more than that against. I do. The question is, what would you normally be looking at for levels of support in striking a targeted rate? Is the level of community support a consideration? Where do these things normally sit?
Through you,
Yes.
Your Worship, those parameters are something that you need to be comfortable with yourself, but I can speak to the historical decisions of this council, and I guess the intent of council in the past with targeted rates is to facilitate an outcome, and generally with those that were required to pay it, or as best you can. And sometimes that happens the first attempt, sometimes it takes more work. The levels probably of support that the council's looked for in the past have been, whilst not exact, something around that 70 to 80, I guess. The 70% that you heard about in 2006 for the gravity scheme is an example of that. That would tend to apply to a number of the other targeted rates we've put in place. My commentary in the report to this, in regard to this, is that, and you'll have your own view on this, but that the continuum from, in terms of support you're looking for, given the extent of the rate that's proposed to be put on property owners, may sit at the higher end of that continuum, but that's a judgment for you to make. So I don't know if that helps, but that's historically where we've been, yeah. So a facilitation role to get an outcome, but in conjunction with those that we're requesting to pay for it.
And
Thank you.
different topic, but thank you for that answer. Would the scheme delivering a higher level of service reduce the necessity for future developments to put in their own 1 in 5, 1 in 10, or would that still be something that those future developments would be expected to put in place?
Through Your Worship, we already require on-site provisions to meet our regional council consents, which is both peak attenuation but also for treatment. It's likely that, treatment would remain regardless, because that's about dealing with contaminants. There is a possibility that you could minimise the amount of peak attenuation, and it's a balance between how much roof area and how much land is considered. So a large block of land with a small roof area, it won't make a difference there. But if you put a large warehouse on that land, then it would make a difference.
And we've seen some of the results of some of that new investment out there with those different solutions. And I remind everybody and who are sitting here, when we looked at Irongate and the compromise that we made, that we have to deal with 10 years on, for those of you who were here, that's on-site solution and with individuals. Eventually, it comes back to how do we deal with this collectively, and that's what we have to be mindful of. All right, so any further questions? No? All right, thank you. Officers, did you want to add anything to the paper that may not have been covered off in questions?
Not from my perspective, Your Worship. I think it's there, and the questions have helped to flush out other matters.
Great, thank you. Well, thank you, everybody. Can I just acknowledge the process that we've been through, and the officers with the public meetings, with speaking to everyone, getting everybody on board and trying to find a way through. I think it's very, very evident that there is support for the scheme. There is support to look at flood protection. that the funding model needs to be considered, and what is fair and equitable. And I think that that's probably part of your deliberations today, councillors, as you reflect on the submissions and understanding the volume of submissions, the percentage of submissions, and what the submitters are saying. So I will now seek some direction from you all, as there are three options there for your consideration. One is to get on with the scheme in the place that we're in now. One is to ask the officers for some more work on funding and flood protection. And the other one is what is the second one? The option two, which is so the one and three are the main considerations for you today. Bruce. And option two is to stop. And can I just say that having been part of this process of any infrastructure, it would be devastating if we stopped investing in infrastructure. My question is around if we were to consider more work done on funding a public good and how that would be considered. Lex, could you just give us a bit of an outline if council was to consider some public good, how would we go about that process?
I think the first thing you need to do is debate that and your starting positions, what you've said in the statement of proposal and what your reasoning might be around that. And that would just be part of the decision making that you undertake today. The only other flag that I have put in the report around public good for you is that I think it comes down to degree here to some extent. The proposal that's been put out is based on no further public good than what the council's already committed, so around about 10% for the design and concept, etc. And that's the message that you gave to your broader community through the annual plan that you didn't consult on. And so that was what was included in the annual plan update that went to your broader community. So I think you all need to weigh up, depending on the degree of public good that you might arrive at in a debate, if you have one, is where that line crosses in your obligation to the wider community and the ratepayer funds being put here. And so difficult to answer exactly, but I think there's an element of degree there and maybe a procedural issue for you. But again, it is something that you really need to reflect on as governors and your level of comfort with that.
Okay. Through the chair, anyone's got anything to add, please? If you have any questions, this is the time to ask. Thank you. Councillor Dixon.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Where would you like me to put the recommendation about the regional council? I've got an amendment or a recommendation here that states that the HDC treat with urgency the agreement of the Hawke's Bay Regional Council to repair the stop bank within 12 months to a satisfactory level for all parties.
So if you're moving recommendations,
I'll move recommendation 3.
your recommendation A,
Option 3.
that you receive the report,
Yes.
and option 3,
Yes.
that you consider that you would like officers to do some more work, and that would include the flood protection with the regional council.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a seconder for that direction? Councillor Watkins, thank you. Now we'll go into debate on those recommendations. Mr. Thu?
Just through you, Your Worship, just seeking some clarification. Officers can work with all pace, earnest and efforts, but we cannot control the timing of another entity in terms of regional council. So just putting that, like,
Your Worship, I'd hate it to go like coastal hazards.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. I'm very happy to take it up with the regional council at a regional leaders level, the importance of this matter as well as officers. Thank you. So we'll ask the officers now to craft up the extra recommendations that have been highlighted. Thank you. And I'll come to further questions. Councillor Nixon, or comments? Thank you.
Thank you. We were talking a few minutes ago about public good. How broad would that catchment be if we happen to go down that road?
Through you, Your Worship, I don't think what's been talked about here is an extension of the catchment as such. More, if I take it right, a wider community.
Financial catchment I'm talking about.
Okay, financial catchment.
Not the water catchment.
Yeah, wider community good into the project, and that's something you'll need to debate as well, whether that's an urban rating area, it's a district-wide type benefit. Those are considerations for you.
Sandra? I just,
If you like to make a comment, Councillor Nixon?
well, I want to ask you a question really. Are we
yes.
truly considering widening the funding scope? I have some problems with doing that, but I'm just wondering, what is our...
So the direction that Lex has just mentioned is that we didn't consult on that through the annual plan process.
Exactly, yeah.
So if we were to go back and talk to our community about extra public good, that's something that we'd have to consider. That's something that you would have to consider in your deliberations today. If you wanted to increase, that's the general rate. That isn't just, that would be a wider general rate of public good. And I think we talked about it in the workshop that day.
Yeah, I'm not
what that would
proposing
mean.
it and I'm not supporting it. I'm just
Okay.
trying to find out where
Okay.
we're going on
So
the
at
issue.
the moment, there isn't any direction to increase public good unless that was a direction from
That's
today.
fine. I'm happy with that answer.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Corbyn?
Thank you, Your Worship. I've got another question. Is there a direct comparison to what we're talking about here? Is there a direct comparison to DCs when development is taking place?
No.
Through you, Your Worship, I mean, in the statement of proposal again, when you've considered equity and fairness across growth areas, our fundamental philosophy is that growth pays for growth. DCs are a tool that we use. We've got a structure plan and a well-organised way of rolling out infrastructure and an ability to receive that revenue from those developing. You know, the Whakatū situation is quite different. Development contributions, not the mechanism, but there are other mechanisms that you would call more private funding in nature, similar to a DC, and that's how a targeted rate would work. Identifying the beneficiary and charging them.
On reflection, we need to learn from 2006. Councillor Fowler?
Yep, through your worship, just I guess a comment. I support option 3. Dearly love to have sorted this. I think most people today. It is giving it to another council to sort because of the timing, a new council. But I agree with option 3. I think there's some things to be worked through that I don't think I could make a decision in it.
Thank you, Councillor Fowler. Councillor Harvey?
Yesterday I may have been of the same position, but having heard the submitters today and how long this has gone on for and dragged on for since prior to even 2006, because 2006 is when we just set an agreement pretty much to what we would do, so it dates back prior to that. I'm of the preference of option 1, but with an amendment that enables the flexibility in the term from being 10 to 25 years.
Thank you. Well, we have a substantive motion on the table. I'll come back to the amendment. I think that the option that is being moved and seconded, I think that some of those considerations that you've highlighted in terms of timing around funding and funding options could be included in this work. And my question would be to the officers, how long would it take to get this work done? Would it be in this triennium? Following on from Councillor Harvey's question.
I'll do my best to answer that. Depending on what extra work you wanted done, but if it's something along the lines that Councillor Fowler requested before, an independent firm looking at a basis of differentiation, I think, subject to engaging someone, that work could probably be turned around in 2 to 3 weeks perhaps. Then you would need to obviously reflect on that and determine how you might use that, what it says and what type of different scheme you'd be bringing back. So hard to know because I don't know what that looks like at this time, but if potentially you would have that information at some point in July. You'd presumably want a reasonably comprehensive engagement process back with the landowners again on that proposition. You would need to allow enough time for that to do it justice, to allow landowners to understand that and reflect on that and any business decision that they might want to make. So, that would get you well through August, even into September, I would have thought, and that's reasonably fast track, I think. So, best endeavours, best scenario, you might be able to be making a decision on this in this term, but reasonably tight time frame, I'd suggest.
Yeah, and timing isn't perfect. There's no question about that, folks. We've been working on this for 3 years, trying to get to a place. So timing is never going to be perfect. If this council can deal with this without carrying it forward, that would be my preference. Exactly. And I think that everybody is in that position today that we need to deal with this. So I think that, the officers have said they could bring that back to us in the next couple of months, 3 months at the max, to make a decision. In that time, having spoken to all the landowners and having the ability to hear their views and bring that back to us. So, that is the direction that we're seeking in those. Bruce, did you want to?
Yes, if I can, Your Worship, just, I guess, reiterate Mr. Verhoeven's point that there's quite a bit of work to do to do the technical work, re-engage with those affected property owners, come back to council with a recommendation. It will be hard up against the election if that can be delivered in that time frame. So I think just from an officer's perspective, making a hard commitment to be able to do all of that work and bring it back to council before the election is probably not something we can categorically confirm as possible, but it might be best endeavours.
Best endeavours, right. Thank you. Councillor Fowler.
Yep, thank you, through your worship. I'd be interested if we did push it out from 10 to 25 years, what the cost would be to the general ratepayer. If a part of any work was brought back, whether it's taken as a action.
Just for clarity on that, that would be a cost borne under the current proposal by the landowners, unless you make alternative decisions, of course. But we could certainly do the maths on the basis that it was spread over the landowners.
So, there is a direction to consider timing for the repayment scheme. Do we, mover and second, do you wish that to be highlighted in these recommendations?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So timing in terms of the payment of the scheme, spreading it across a longer period than what has been proposed? Yes, you'd like that in there? And the mover, would you also like there to be considered timing or as soon as possible, or some sort of timing in terms of bringing this back?
It'd be great if we could decide it before this particular council finishes. So,
so you'd like to add as soon as possible?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you. Councillor Butto?
Thank you, Your Worship. I agree with the comments made by Councillor Harvey, and I would like to see this put to bed, and so I would support option 1 as well. But I can understand the direction that option 3 is taking. So, yeah.
My question really on option 1 to you both is, we have a clear direction that there's support for the scheme. So the engineering solution, stage 2, to manage this. But what we have heard today and what we consider today is that we haven't had a clear direction on how it is going to be fair and equitable for all of the people. So my question to you, as you sit here today, as you consider your amendment, we are responsible for all submitters and to understand how we fairly and equitably place this targeted rate across people or a differential rate across everybody. So that is the consideration for you to think of if this motion, substantive motion, is lost. Councillor Nixon?
Look, this question might have been asked, I could have been writing something when Councillor Harvey was asking this question. Can we have a different rate for different property owners?
Historically, we haven't done that.
But is it possible?
I guess it's possible.
Well, it's just, it would move some people to support the scheme.
The recommendations here are to consider the funding options to how we fair and equitably split this across all people and the beneficiaries. And that's the work that would need to come back to you for your consideration.
That's what I was unsure of. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, okay, I know where
All
I
right,
stand.
I'm bringing back the motion, the substantive motion on the table. And we're just adding in those two areas as soon as possible and looking at timelines of repayment schemes. And so, Councillor Nixon, have you completed your questions?
Oh, sorry.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harvey?
Yeah, thank you. Just in response to your comments, and also following on from what Councillor Fowler was saying, whereby it was leave it to the next council. I am really worried that we will get to August, and that's actually what we will end up doing. And we will end up pushing the can down the road once again to what is also a new leadership, new council, with no background knowledge of this at all, and having to educate them to then get them into a decision. So it'll probably end up going back out for consultation again at that stage. So that is my grave concern about this. Based on the fact of how long it's continued, from 2006.
Yes, I hear your point. Councillor Monteputo Hendry.
Kia ora, through you, Your Worship. I'm just wondering, just for clarity, please, I don't know who to direct this to. We've spoken so much about the Clive River levels, how everything feeds into there from the Karamu to the Clive, and just capturing everybody in all of the submissions. Is there any way that we have a tool or a lever that we can work with HBRC to get certainty around the dredging of the Clive River? I do think that this is a key to this.
Through your worship, I'll try and answer that one. I think if we include that in that scope, we're following up around the stop bank. There's wider matters for HBRC to give feedback to this council around the status of funding, the status of programs. Substantively the stop bank, but obviously there's some related matters that have come through. So I think we just roll that into that conversation with HBRC. We can do that as an officer.
Officer level, not as a recommendation, through your chair.
Through your worship, I think we can use the existing wording around working with HBRC on their matters in their jurisdiction.
We've got it covered up there. You're comfortable with that being covered up there with the HBC work? We need to really focus on we've got to work with HBRC, which we've set up there. And so the flood protection is one part. We need to focus on this scheme that we've gone out to consult with, and hearing the submissions today. Councillor Fowler?
Yep, thank you, Through Your Worship. Don't know if I can articulate this, but further to what I've said and what Councillor Harvey said about leaving it for another council, is it possible, and the officers are going to love me for this, to put a date by which it could come back to us so we could tidy it up this trimester? Is that possible? They're looking at me saying, I hope you don't get elected again.
I'll just wait for the officers to confer, and it's probably the Deputy Chief Executive in terms of timing. Scott, did you want anything? I'll just take another question. I'll come back to you, Councillor Fowler, as has been written up here. Councillor Monteputo Hendry.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just could my query please be minuted as an action? Because it highlights stop bank but not the scheme, and I think that this is part of it.
Action is,
That
Councillors.
council work with HBRC officers, or that council has asked HDC officers to work with HBRC officers to have an MOU or an understanding of some sort to do more flood mitigation works within this scheme, i.e. the Te Awa Mokatuararo, within a suitable project timeline.
so first of all, we have to identify that they consider this a priority with all the flood protection around. So, you know, that is, that's an extra MOU. I think that could transfer into a new triennium. What you're doing here is having an initial conversation to say, we need this as a priority. But we'll record that as an action. That is the
Thank you.
intention of you, Councillor Montepetro Hendry, that we consider this an action, it has to be followed up, and we'll do our best.
Thank you.
Across all levels. And we'll come back to now Councillor Fowler's question and comment about timing.
So through your worship, could we have to get it done for this trimester, could we perhaps put a date on it, come back to us with all the recommendations that we can deliberate and make a decision, so it doesn't go to another council?
If council was willing to make a decision of this nature, in late September, early October, we could try and make a commitment that we could bring it back by that period of time. I think we're trying to work this out on the fly. It's a bit challenging. And I think to Mr. Verhoeven's point, there is a path to work through that would enable us to get, be able to bring this back, but it is very tight and it doesn't really allow for any slip in time. I'm just nervous about making a categoric statement just to confirm that we could do it in that time frame.
So we're going to put it here as soon as possible.
Within this trimester?
Yep, within the trimester.
We'll report back if we can.
And to report back if it's not possible. Triennium. Not the trifecta. Councillor Te Skipworth?
I support the latest recommendation by Councillor Fowler, but I wonder if, I understand that we're pushing it, but could we be, like other projects, be taken along as progression happens, so that when it does come to it, we've had a lot of the information? So as the progress happens, can we get reports back on where we're at with the progress? Yeah.
Yes, certainly through performance and
absolutely,
monitoring.
yeah.
Through each performance and monitoring committee. Councillor Fowler,
Yes, totally agree with that.
update on the program of work. Just finishing off here for the mover and seconder, adding in those timeframes. Yes. That's a good question. Do we have any budget for this extra work to be done? Thank you, Mr. Kay.
Through your worship, just responding to the commentary about extending the timeframes, it does come with risk, and I'd just like to put on the table that council officers have been lent right into this project, and it's been a 6-month journey from just before Christmas to get to this point now, and just to keep that present in mind with the 3-month program that's essentially being put together. The risks associated with this, and it has been articulated in the report, albeit briefly, that taking additional time will come at cost to do the valuation work around how to put together a differentiated rate to put to the scheme for consultation. That will come at a cost. Just having the project open naturally accrues cost. Yes, within that realm, I believe budget does still exist within the original budget that's been set up by the chief executive to complete that work, but we need to do a little bit of due diligence on that, just about what that total will actually be. Also, the other point is that with the pricing, and again, this has been articulated in the report, the deferral of time and holding the construction cost, we're not talking about the price, the construction cost of the works will increase. It costs money to have the project open.
Okay, thank you. All right, that's good to understand. Now we're going to focus, please, on those recommendations up there. Everybody, please, starting at the top, scroll down. Thanks, Lynn.
No, can you
Scroll down so we can see from the top.
other way?
Okay, there we are. So if everyone could read those and just move them up, thanks, Lynn, so we can read them all. Thank you. Okay, mover and seconder, councillor Watkins.
Just in 5, and I'll run this past the mover. The chief executive be directed to work heavenly items. I don't want an out on this. Even if we've got to come back at night to get this thing sorted in this triennium, I want it black and white that we're going to sort it. That just reads towards having it. We may get there, we may not. I want it more definite than that.
Okay, thank you. Mover, are you comfortable with that? Thank you. Okay, that the chief executive is directed to having items 1 to 4 above investigated. That's all you need. You just need to take out towards. Okay, thank you. All right. Any further questions or comments? Anyone wish to add any further comments to the substantive motion? Mr. Henson, we haven't heard from you today. Very warm welcome. So this is largely looking at how we manage the payment. We understand the engineering solutions. There we have agreement on the engineering solutions from the community. This is how we pay and who pays. Mr. Henson, have you got any pearls of wisdom to add?
Yeah, through you, Your Worship, I just caution the words in item C around the repairs to the stop banks. I think we need to reword that around confirming the assessment of the state of the stop bank, because early advice has indicated that perhaps it was at an appropriate design standard. So the inference that it needs repairs infers that it has either failed or not operating as intended.
I think that's very, very helpful. Move up, please. Yes.
And that could have liability issues associated with
Yep, absolutely. Thank you. Lynn? So if we can just reword that now, Bruce, picking up on Graham's comments about C with the regional council repair to stop bank. I'll come back to the mover in a second. Did you wish to have a right of reply while we're just finishing finalising?
Yeah, thank you, Worship. This has always been very complex. Nothing in this whole submissions was definitive to anyone. There was those that said, yes, do it, and yes, we will pay. There were others that said, yes, do it, but no, we won't pay. There were others that said it's not required. I never got flooded. There's no benefit in it to me. And we've also got the regional council complex that's coming into it. So I think option 3 was the best one for us to go out and do a little bit more work and come back during this trimester. Thank you.
Thank you. Well said, Councillor Dixon. Councillor Watkins? No, thank you. Councillor Terry-Skipworth?
Sorry, Your Worship, I've just got a question. Based on the recommendations, could we beef it up a little bit more and agree in principle that the work is to be completed? What we're asking for is the options on how to pay for it. Is that what we've got there right now or not?
So we're looking at the funding options and that's the differential.
Yeah,
Did
but
you
have
want?
we agreed in principle that we want this work to go ahead? The only thing that's holding us up, is that an option? That's my question.
Through your worship, so, no, you haven't agreed that this is something that will go ahead. I think that what you're asking officers to go away and do is investigate alternative funding arrangements for the solution that's been identified. I think there's general acceptance of the solution is the preferred solution, but not that definitely council will go ahead with the work. That needs this extra piece of work. It needs to come back. You need to consider that with the feedback that comes back with it. I think just one other point on this is that you'll be aware that by making this decision, we won't be striking a rate for this coming financial year. That'll be something that comes in the year after, given we only get one chance to do it on an annual basis.
So does everyone understand what that means? When you strike a rate, sorry, Scott, you want to speak to that?
Through your worship, just another factor to be aware of is once you formulate what might be a differential rating system and talk to the people that own land out at Whakatu about that, you may find that some of the people that said, yes, go ahead to the scheme as you've proposed it, say over my dead body when it comes to a differential rating system that sees them paying more. So I think it wouldn't be wise to predetermine that you're definitely landing on that outcome until you've worked up the scheme and given people a chance to see it, understand it, comment on it, submit on it.
Thank you. Good advice. Thank you. Councillor Harvey, last speaker. Okay, thank you. Right, so we have a standard motion on the table. I'm going to put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Thank you, 2 against. All right, that motion is carried. Thank you to our submitters. Thank you to our officers for all of your hard work getting us to this place today. Just asking for a little bit more work and hopefully get this sorted before the end of triennium, and that'll be our best endeavours. So thank you everyone for your participation. A lot of reading. Thank you for the wisdom and the wise words and the ways to try and make this happen. And that concludes today's council meeting. And we now close the meeting. Thank you to our community who may have joined us. Mā te wā. And now we are having our workshop on local waters done well.